That's it. Hey, thank you very much for coming out to watch the movie, guys. Really appreciate it. We're obviously going to do a Q&A afterwards, but I just want to thank you for coming to see an advanced screening of Renfield, something that we worked really hard on and we're really passionate about and really excited about. I wanted to share with you kind of what I've been doing before the movie since we've been showing it, but our movie is rated R, and the MPAA has they sort of give you warnings as to why the movie is rated R. So I use that as a rallying cry to get excited about the movie. So, are you ready for bloody violence? Are you ready for some gore? Are you ready for language throughout?
Yes.
Are you ready for occasional drug use? Are you ready for Nicolas Hoult? Are you ready for Nicolas motherfucking Cage? We present to you Renfield. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks for coming. How great was that? My wife hates it when I say that, but it's true. It's so good. All right, I'm so excited to do this Q&A. So let's welcome the composer of Renfield, The Quiet Place, Scream, Wolverine, Ford vs. Ferrari, Logan, and like 10,000 other movies that you love, Marco Beltrami. The producer of Renfield, Lego Batman, Lego Ninjago, Tomorrow War, a proud Trojan, and this is my favorite part of her bio, she will always leave room for dessert, Samantha Nisenboim. And finally, the director and producer of Renfield, Tomorrow War, and the Lego Batman movie, Chris McKay. Yeah, Marco, get on the end. No one wants you here. So guys, I love this movie, and I'm excited to talk to you about it. But I was wondering, when you guys were young, what movies did you love that made you want to make movies?
What movies made me want to make movies? Probably seeing a lot of Spielberg movies and Joe Dante movies and John Carpenter movies and Sam Raimi, obviously. Sam Raimi movies. There's a lot of Evil Dead 2 in this movie. So yeah, a lot. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, same, totally. Nope, Titanic.
What'd you say?
Titanic.
Titanic's a good movie.
It's a great movie. We just watched it in IMAX 3D a couple months ago.
Nice.
Probably Fantasia, and the Sergio Leone spaghetti western movies.
Cool. I always love hearing that. So this started out as an idea by Robert Kirkman, who created The Walking Dead. How did it come to you guys? Like, when did you first get involved in this project?
Somebody flipped me the script, and I read it and became obsessed with it and felt like no one could make this movie besides Chris McKay. And just,
But they hired Dexter Fletcher first.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yes. They did go through a number of directors, and there's a reason it didn't work out. And then I just, McKay and I are always talking about scripts that are coming in, scripts that we're chasing, and what's out there and what's great. And he had the chance to take a look, and we both fell in love.
And Chris, what about you? What made you want to direct this?
There are a couple of things. The idea of trying to, I think I always take on things that are challenging, and the idea of trying to do something that's a horror comedy, and has action in it and has a lot of different tones. It was also an excuse for me to play around with color and lenses and that sort of thing, because I've always wanted to. There's an artist called Basil Gogos who did a lot of Famous Monsters covers, and he's basically the guy that interpreted all of the old black and white, Universal monsters into color for the first time. So a lot of people saw them, and he did a lot of very garish, saturated color, high contrast stuff. Which is a great way of being able to, in my mind, was a great way to be able to blend comedy and horror and action and still kind of retain all of the, properties of that. And then I'd met with Nick Hoult on a different project, and I'd always wanted to work with him. And when I read the script, the first person and the only person I thought could do this, the only way it could work is with Nick Hoult. And so it looked like a fun way to be able to get to work with him and do some fun action scenes and try to do something like Evil Dead 2, but with a studio budget.
Marco, what about you? How early in the process did you come on?
I think, I don't remember. The movie was shot, right?
Yeah, we just finished shooting, and then we met with you.
Yeah.
We literally
Yeah, I mean, I read a script, and I was, you don't see that much original stuff these days, and I was really taken with like how original it was. And then after talking to Chris and Samantha about the film, and hearing the things that we could try and work with, it was really exciting. So
Marco brought up Lalo Schifrin as a reference, and I was immediately hooked that we were going to see eye to eye on this because I like composers who are very experimental and try things, and Marco was just super game to make something really fun and original with the music, which you need. A movie like this, especially when you're flipping tones, needs somebody who can really be really nimble musically.
That's cool. Well, I wanted to talk about that with the tone, because the tone's perfect. But I think so. But if the tone doesn't work in a movie like this, the whole thing doesn't work, because you're playing. It's obviously ridiculously violent, but it's also so funny. And so I want to talk about how you guys maintain that balance, while you were doing it, and if there was ever stuff that you felt went too far in one direction, of went too violent or went too comedic, that you're okay, we need to pull back because this is not.
Yeah, I mean, went too far for the studio, for sure. I think, obviously on set you have to push things, you have to try stuff. I mean, there's no, you got to leave all your money on the table, when you're on set, So I certainly did shoot more crazy stuff, and there's, I threw some of it in the end credits. There's a few things in there, and there'll be some stuff on the DVD, hopefully. But that was for I think as far as how do you maintain that tone, I think you have to ground everything in the characters and in the situation. It starts with the writing. It starts with the characters in the story, and you have to make the horror movie world feel horrific, and you have to try to make all of that stuff feel as real and dramatically interesting as possible, so that you can, so that the comedy can come out of the characters and comedy come out of the situation. You're not importing comedy into the scene. Hopefully, that's also what makes the violence funny. I mean, I wanted to try to make the violence as fun and as funny. I mean, that's why we colored the blood a ridiculous color of red, because it doesn't exist in the spectrum of blood. And hire actors who are so versatile that they can, that have as many tools as Nicolas Cage does or as Nick Hoult does, and can create, can flow from one within a scene, can flow from something that's comedic to something that's dramatic.
Well, I want to talk about the actors in a second, but I was going to say, in terms of that, I'd seen it before, but watching it again tonight, my favorite scene in the movie is the apartment scene with those guys, and it's just to me, it's such a distillation of what this movie is, where it's every little thing Nicolas Cage does is hilarious and it's amazing, but they're getting to this really emotional level, and Nicolas Cage is you can tell he's in this abusive relationship and he's having a breakdown, and then as Nicolas Cage is saying horrible things, he's touching his finger to his lips, and it's hilarious. And it's do you want to talk about that scene and what that was? Because I really think it's amazing what they pulled off in this scene to be able to do the highs of the emotion and the comedy in this one sort of sequence.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's just Cage. We talked about him being Anne Bancroft in The Graduate. Oh, yeah. in that scene, and that. And so he's kind of, in some ways he's channeling Anne Bancroft in The Graduate.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that more? Because I read an interview where he said that, and which sounds batshit crazy, but what his feeling was, why he was channeling Anne Bancroft in that.
Because you always have to play the especially for comedy to work in a situation like this, you have to play the reality of the scene. You have to play the fact that this is, part of the job a little bit, as a director was to talk about taking out as much of the supernatural stuff as humanly possible. Like, don't play like you're a fucking vampire, and he's your servant. Like, play it like it's a jilted lover. That these are, he's a bad boyfriend, but he found out his boyfriend, girlfriend was cheating on him, and play it like that. Play it like with that level of like hurt, and you know what he's up to, and you're not gonna let him know that you know what he's up to. You're gonna let him fucking continue to lie to you. Renfield's continuing to lie to him throughout the scene, so Cage gets to play all of that stuff that he does, and we just kept, pushing him to just, try more things and just be, just really overplay how fucking, how much what's going on, and he obviously rose to the challenge.
Well, let's talk about casting. So back before that, obviously Nicolas Cage is amazing in this movie. He's out of control. And I remember when I read the casting, and I think everyone kind of had that reaction. We're like, it's like, okay, Renfield, blah blah. I'm just like, wait a minute, Nicolas Cage is gonna play Dracula? That sounds amazing. Was he like what was that process? Was there a list of like, okay, potential Draculas, or did you always sort of have Nicolas Cage in mind?
Well, there's always a list. There's always a list with the studio.
Who's on the studio's list?
Every breathing white guy in film history, but Cage wasn't. Definitely wasn't on
the list.
And I guess for us, we wanted the reason why we sort of focused on Nick was. I think there's just a very short list of people that you're really truly interested in seeing. Like, Dracula's a character that's been done a million times, and it's like, other than like Hamlet or fucking Sherlock Holmes or something like that, like Dracula's a character that's been done the most times, so finding somebody who you actually really are curious about what they're going to do with Dracula. I mean, I literally came up with two names. We had Nicolas Cage and Daniel Day-Lewis, and those are the two people. I was just like, who are the two people you think who you're gonna fucking spend your money to go see play Dracula? Who are you most interested in really truly seeing, and not like, okay, cool, that could be cool. It's somebody like you're really truly curious about, and it's going to give you something. And Cage every day is like one of the most inspirational. People to work with, because he's got a childlike enthusiasm about making movies. So every day on set, he's so inventive, and he just really is. Besides the fact he's got a cinephile's knowledge of movies and loves horror movies and that kind of thing, he's just so full of joy when he's making movies. He just really likes being there. He's in, he was in fucking 4 hours of makeup before he gets on set, and then we shoot for a 10 or 12 hour day, and then he's got to take it off at the end of the day, and he's just like he's making fucking Super 8 movies in his backyard like when he was a kid, and that's something really you don't get a lot, and somebody's got that level of joy. It's really infectious, and makes you just want to make more movies with them and make them. It's very inspirational.
Yeah, and I think on the Cage front too, like Chris was saying, the studio had a bunch of ideas, and if we had gone to one of those guys, it would have just been another script that landed on their desk, and maybe they were interested and maybe they weren't. But for Cage, this is a character he has always really wanted to play, and that is who we wanted to be, have a seat at the table with us in order to fulfill the filmmaking experience and to give audiences what they wanted. And that was part of why we wanted to work with him too.
And is it, because I read that you said something that he stayed in character all the time, but then he's like, I didn't. No. So what was what was that actual?
I didn't fucking say that. Clearly, he did not stay in character the entire time. I mean, he was in costume, so like he's in the heavy makeup. So I think the question was sort of I think the question was something like, what was it? Did do you always feel like you're talking to Dracula? And I think yes, he looks like fucking. I'm sitting here talking to a guy with fucking teeth and the hair and makeup and stuff like that. So he looks like Dracula the entire time, but he was not. He was not like Jared Leto method acting or something like something like that, where he's like being Joker and pulling pranks on people or some fucking shit. Like he was like a normal human being.
Right, but
He was
imagine
like a really normal guy.
imagine being a PA and having to fucking walk the guy back to his trailer when he's in that getup.
Yeah.
You're just like, all right, I'm gonna keep my distance, but he couldn't be lovelier the entire time.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Well, I want to back.
So please, if anybody, please fight that that idea.
He was very, because I read this interview and he was very like sensitive about that. He goes, well, I felt like I joked around with
Yeah,
him,
it was really funny.
and I had a
He's
good
like-
time in between takes.
Yeah.
He goes, maybe because I had the teeth in.
Yeah.
That they felt.
Well, he had teeth in the contacts and things like that sometimes. So he's got an intense look.
Well, Marco, I wanted to backtrack a little bit and back to the tone question because your score is absolutely fantastic, and then same thing to you.
All of Marco's scores are fantastic. I just want to put that out there.
Which is why he has scored 10,000 of your favorite movies.
Yeah.
Look him up when you get home, and it's fairly amazing.
It's insane how many movies Marco's done.
Yeah. But do you want to talk about your process and sort of finding the same thing, finding that right balance and the tone between sort of the gothic horror and also the comedy and the action, and like it's a really fantastic score.
First of all, it's fun to. I don't hear the stuff because I come on after the movie shot. So, but it's great to hear these stories. It's fun. But no, I mean everything I do is guided by what the material that I get, and so I respond to the movie. I respond visually, and when Chris is doing this amazing stuff in the edit room, and we'd be going back and forth, and I'd send him stuff, and he'd try, and it's a real collaboration because he's trying stuff, moving things. Hey, check this out. What do you think of this? And then I'm like, wow, that totally informs the scene in a way I never even thought of, And so it's a real give and take. And listen, when I started on this, and the movie evolved a lot. This movie was not an easy movie. I mean, I can't say it's an easy movie to make because you made the movie, but I mean the whole process was hard. But I think oftentimes through hard processes you get something that's extra special. And when I started on this, my original impulse was, besides Lalo Schifrin, was to use the original Swan Lake as my inspiration, and that was it. It totally sets a different tone for the whole thing, and so that's all gone. It's actually one place I noticed that we still ended up using it in the movie, but as soon as you put music on a scene, it colors it a lot more, and so just being aware of being on that edge and whether you're going too far or not, it's a very sensitive thing.
And Swan Lake is the only piece of music in the original 1931 Todd Browning movie, so that's why that's sort of important too.
Yeah.
To the history of Dracula. So there was like Easter eggs like that where I was trying to find and put in the movie some connection to whether it's the Todd Browning movie, the Hammer movies, Disco, Frank Langella, Gary Oldman. There's shout outs to all those movies in them.
Well, let's talk about that because I love that I love how you used the original or the 1931 Dracula movie, and like it was pretty amazing because I don't think Nicolas Cage looks like Bela Lugosi, but the way you lit it and the there were times in the movie where it's like, oh my god, he looks like fucking Bela Lugosi. Yeah. When did that idea come to you of like, okay, let's use the footage of that movie and like kind of insert these guys into it, because it was a great way of grounding this in sort of the history of Universal horror.
Well, it's an idea that came out of the character, kind of wanting to have a connection. I mean, I wanted to have a connection to the past, and I also wanted the audience to really truly feel that Renfield and Dracula had a past. And so whether or not people have watched the Todd Browning movie, or whether through pop culture and other movie parodies or posters or something like that, everyone has some connection to that, especially that moment on the staircase with the spiderweb behind Dracula, and I don't drink wine, and I am Dracula and all that stuff. Like I think most people have some passing familiarity with that. So by putting our characters in there and something that's old but also feels like familiar. It just felt like you could do a shorthand for their past and really kind of feel it, because it was important to kind of just sort of feel it and absorb it. So and the studio was not interested in that at all in any way, shape, or form.
That's actually surprising because Universal Studios got started making monster movies.
Yeah, I mean
that's their history.
It was surprising.
Yes. If it had been up to me, I would have gone through the Hammer stuff and would have gone through, Disco Dracula and all of the '70s stuff and all that kind of thing. But it turned out great, and we had Jamie Price, our visual effects supervisor, and that whole team put together, really did a great job of compositing those guys in there and got really nerdy about the lenses and lighting and everything else, because that's a big part of how that stuff works, how you make that stuff play. And just for me, that was another thing for this movie, being able to kind of use, in general for the whole movie, use old anamorphic lenses that were uncoated. The front element was uncoated, so you got a lot of light play in the movie, and just kind of gave it kind of just its own unique style. That was something that was important to me is for the movie as a whole.
Well, Marco talked about how the movie changed a lot, and then I had a question. When I was first watching it, the group therapy stuff's awesome, and it's amazing, and it really sells the movie well. And I remember back to when I first saw Austin Powers years ago, is I love that movie, but when he goes to group therapy with his son, I'm like, I fucking love this movie because it's bringing in all these different things. Did the script always start there, or is that something you found during the editing process of let's begin the movie with him in this situation?
Yeah, the scripts kind of started in a couple of different spots. There was something sort of quasi with the castle, kind of an opening that's similar-ish to how we open now, but the studio was also from a budgetary standpoint, they wanted to chop that off and just start in modern times. They were very afraid of like the people were not going to fucking care or get any of that stuff about the past. So they just wanted to kind of start in modern times. And there was a couple of scenes prior to the CODA meeting, but through the process of both us trying to find the right start for the movie, and also just budgetarily, we just kind of got to a place where the CODA meeting was the right place to start. And the movie didn't have voiceover in it in the script, but there was. I mean, I don't love all of the voiceover, but there was some need to put voiceover in the movie to get the Renfield's a very passive character. If you just started him kind of sitting there watching, he's a more passive character. So being able to kind of get him kind of actively involved in the movie was something we sort of found ultimately. I mean, I kind of knew that we were going to get to a place like that, but we kind of found that in post.
Is there a longer version of the movie that we might see at some point, or are you saying that there were sequences that maybe you never shot in the first place, or?
There were definitely some sequences we didn't shoot in the first place, which I think ultimately is for the except for most of the sequences. It's probably better that we didn't shoot them. There's a couple that would have been good if we shot them. But I don't know if there'll ever be a separate cut. I don't think there's work. You're not going to get like Apocalypse Now Redux with Renfield.
Well, you talked a little bit about Nick Hoult. I'm obsessed with Nick Hoult. I think he's amazing.
Same.
I think he can do anything. And if you guys haven't seen The Great, it's my wife and my favorite show. He's so fantastic on the show. What made you think of him initially, or just you were a fan, or what was it about Nick that you felt like really worked for this character?
He's unafraid to do things that are unlikable. Whether that's unlikable, being a guy who's helping Dracula murder people or just eat bugs on camera. He's unafraid to mess with stuff, and that's a similarity between him and Nick Cage, is that they, they'll go for it. They'll try things. They're unafraid to try things, and yet both of them have incredible charm and chemistry with all of the other actors. Hoult, throws himself into stunt stuff. There was a dance sequence that we had at one point that he threw himself into choreography for that. And he's just, he's unafraid to not look cool. And I think a lot of people have a hard time, kind of like losing that a little bit. And he kind of, if you look at what he did in Warm Bodies, if you look at what he did in Fury Road, there's not a lot of people that can do that. And when I read the script, there was only one person that I saw being Renfield. The only way the movie could work was if Nick Hoult played Renfield, because he's just like, he could do everything you needed for this movie.
And also, such a good cast. I love Awkwafina, and she's really. They have such an interesting dynamic in this. Like, did they read together at all, or like they're so good together, or you just had this feeling that Nick Hoult and Awkwafina would be this like great pair?
Yeah, I kind of like their crazy height difference. That was really really charming to me for some reason. I thought that was kind of cute. And in a situation like this, you don't necessarily get to read people together, so you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants a little bit. So I knew that Nick Hoult is, is a guy who can really put everyone at ease and just be really generous in a scene. He's a really generous actor. So I knew that we could make that work. And then once Awkwafina showed up and she was there on set, like it was just like they just got along like gangbusters. Like they really were like a fun pair. It was right away from the camera test. We knew right away, okay, these guys are gonna have a lot of fun together, and they were just riffing off each other and having a good time. Like I said, there's just that kind of weird, cartoonish kind of, they just look physically, so different in their height, and he's kind of this gangly, guy and stuff like that. Yeah, it was immediately like, to me, it was gonna work right away.
Yeah, they're good too. So I read. Let's talk about the bugs. So I read that you and Nick Hoult had a bug eating thing at the start of the production to decide what bugs, and it's like there were some gummy bugs and actual real bugs.
Yes.
Like there were flavored crickets that you guys tried and tarantulas. Is that true?
Yes.
Not tarantulas.
We didn't. Yeah, no one tried the tarantula.
But someone did bring you a tarantula.
Yes.
There was a fucking table of all these bugs laid out for them to try, and in a move of solidarity, McKay, because Hoult had to eat them for production and wanted to try them ahead of time, and in a move of solidarity, McKay chomped down two, and
there was some peer pressure.
Yeah, well, I don't know who could have contributed to that peer pressure. And I just stood there videoing them.
You didn't
and did not
There's no show of solidarity over here. The crickets actually weren't bad. I think they were, I think they were flavored or something like that. But the potato bug had layers of crunch to it that you went through and then found the next layer and the next layer. And then you had pieces in your mouth for about a week that I could not wash out. That was a huge mistake that I will hopefully never make again.
Did you bring any of the extra ones to the scoring session so that Marco could?
I should have brought him to Skywalker.
There's got to be some advantage to being the composer.
Yeah.
Let's talk about. So you got shot in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So Samantha, tell me that you were there during Mardi Gras, and what went down during Mardi Gras when you guys were shooting?
We lost the writer on a Mardi Gras float.
That's true. We were trying to.
We had notes from the studio while we were shooting the movie.
Yes, and could not get a hold of Ridley.
We couldn't find the writer, and we heard that he was on a parade float.
Oh.
We literally had to give the crew 4 days off to celebrate Mardi Gras and go out and get wasted and then come back to work on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
A writer was probably so excited to be invited to set that he got caught up in it and then ended up on the float.
The spirit moved him.
That's amazing. So, the design of the movie is so great. One of the things that struck with me, I love the blood throne. And I thought that was like such a great, again, distillation of like the modern version of this. It's like, okay, you would have blood bags like to feed him. And I love the design of that. Do you want to talk about where that idea came from?
Yeah, I was very fortunate to work with a couple of real, geniuses. I sort of, talked about, obviously Marco, Jamie Price, the visual effects supervisor, and Alec Hammond and Lisa Lavas. Alec was the production designer, and Lisa did the costumes. And I guess I should also throw in Dave Cole, who did the color correction of the movie, or photochem. But the Alec and I talked a lot about, because I think it was really originally written for a sewer or something like that. There was something else, and we just, we kind of searched for what could be a really interesting location that it could be credible that they could, hide in this place and have, but also like something that Renfield, you'd have gurneys, you'd have things that would help him be able to bring bodies in. You'd have a blood bank and possibly, blood bags and that sort of thing. And Renfield, just show off that Renfield is smart and that they're sort of like, even though they maybe had fallen on hard times, that they, that he was, had some ingenuity to him. So, and the blood throne was, it's a dental chair for a dental surgery chair that it was actually, I think, something we saw when we were touring Charity Hospital, because the exterior and the initial hallway stuff is a famous hospital in New Orleans that was taken out by Katrina. And so we shot in some of that, but some of the stuff that inspired our set was a little too asbestos-y and lead painty for us to shoot in. So I didn't go full Werner Herzog, and we decided to build it. And the throne was just something that I thought, what could sort of look like something kind of, look like something like from their past, something that felt ostentatious but also was practical. And so the surgical chair, which is, like I said, something kind of looked like something we saw pieces of in the Charity Hospital, and then the blood bags kind of fanning out behind it just felt like both had a sort of like a cool look to it, but also felt like it was practical and kind of made it feel like we were sort of honoring Dracula's. Renfield was trying to honor Dracula's station, and there's a little bit of, like, I don't know if you know the artist Jeff Darrow, who did a lot of Matrix designs and did did an interesting comic book with Frank Miller, but there's a little bit of Jeff Darrow's kind of design in the blood bags that are kind of going into the guy, going into a guy to kind of help him go back to life. We stole liberally from a lot of artists. But Alec was a genius, and he put that whole thing together. And it's just when you go into a set like that, and it's actually like something you can shoot 360 degrees if you want to, and the lighting is done more practically than using a lot of lighting units. That's something that is really, for a filmmaker, that's really incredible.
Little side thing, I was reading all of your guys' bio set, and Marco, I saw that when you first came to LA, that Jerry Goldsmith was your mentor.
Yes.
And Jerry Goldsmith, you guys should know him, but one of the greatest composers of all time. What was that experience like, and what did you learn from him, or what did you take away from that?
I learned. Well, I came from going to music school, and I was running a lot of concert music, and it's more based on complexity, I guess. The thing that Jerry was really great at was being as concise and economical as possible, and writing things as simply and as clearly. And I think that's the thing that stuck with me most of all. Like, you want to get your ideas, not just for playability, because I mean the musicians, when we're going to record this, they're sight reading the music, and you don't have a lot of time, so you want it to sound as good as possible in the shortest amount of time. But also for getting your ideas across. You don't want it to be convoluted. You want it to be clear. And so Jerry was the one who sort of pounded that into us.
That's cool. That's great. Thanks. Chris, I want to talk about the action and the fight scenes, because I love action movies, and I thought the fights were fantastic. And again, I feel like you found this really great tone where it's like there's a playfulness to the action that kind of remind me of sort of Jackie Chan, where it's like there's a lot of specificity to the moves and like the amount of gore that you see, which is kind of amazing. Do you want to talk about your approach to the fight scenes? And
Yeah, there's one other genius I left off was Chris Brewster, the stunt coordinator and co-second unit director with Jamie Price. Samantha and I worked with Chris on Tomorrow War. He came in at the end of the Tomorrow War when we were up in Iceland and shooting the final fight between Pratt and J.K. Simmons and the female White Spike, which turned into like was I started off as like a gunfight that turned into sort of a knockdown brawl kind of thing, and Chris had choreographed that, and I really liked working with him because I like kind of he's got like a nice brutal style, but also just a guy who just was really quick on his feet, and like if I threw him thoughts and things like that, he'd come up with solutions really fast. So he came, and one of the things we talked about very early on is that the fight scenes had to have a point, and that they also have to have something that's funny in them. And we immediately went to Jackie Chan and just started looking at Jackie Chan fights and kind of studied that. And so he started doing stunt viz. And his first bit of stunt viz was the restaurant scene, and it was just like he got the tone so fast. He understood, there's got to be something that's there's gonna be something that's super bloody and funny, and then there's gonna be something that's kind of whimsical, like with the ska guys and kind of throwing the chloroform rag around and catching it and stuff like that. Like he just really brought a lot of invention to the fight scenes, and he was just a joy to work with. So his choreography is amazing. So very fortunate to work with Chris.
that's awesome.
Yeah, we had a lot of time with Brewster. Like we had the time with the actors and with, we call him Ninja, because they were all in New Orleans with us in prep and learning all the choreography well in advance and just being able to go through and the repetition, because our shoot schedule was so challenging and it was very heavy location based. So we had to be in and out of these spots real quick. And he just did such a good job creating a wonderful, friendly environment in his gym and getting all those guys up to speed and allowing them to feel like they were nailing it. And he brought down a great team too, but he's just fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to open up the questions in a second, but Samantha, you are a Trojan, and you went here, and this is our first time on stage with the movie and this Q&A, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
What was your major and what was your experience here?
I was a film major. I went to the School of Cinematic Arts, and I loved it. I brought my sweatshirt actually with me that I bought freshman year that's all torn up, and I had all my classes in this theater with Drew
Casper.
Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Who I think finally retired. He is as old as Dracula.
Yes.
That's so mean, but he was amazing.
Kind of is
He still is
Dracula,
amazing.
guys.
So.
Him and Rick Jewell were my two favorite teachers. And I loved SC. I mean, it was a dream come true to actually get into this school. It was a dream come true to go here and ride my bike to my classes every day. And I cannot believe that I'm up here because I was sitting in these seats dreaming about this day, and I did not think it could ever happen. So if you are like me and you are a kid with a dream, work your ass off, and you too can make movies one day. And you should, because it's really fun.
That's awesome.
You can be an adult with a dream too. It's
What'd you say, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
You can be an adult with a dream. You don't have to be a kid with a dream.
Yeah, I'm still
You can also be an adult.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, thank you so much for being here. I truly love the movie. I am a big Dracula fan. And I really love the themes that you explore. And I love how you touch like toxic relationships and self-esteem. Can you talk more about that and what research did you do to try to portray that more accurately, and if you have any advice for people that are in that actual situation?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of like doing a movie that's about codependency and toxic relationship through the lens of Dracula felt very intuitive. That's what it made it really. To me, that was what made the movie kind of fresh and different, and original. So what better character than Dracula to portray like the height of like toxic narcissism. And so to be able to tell that story, the supernatural movies, especially Dracula movies. I mean, Dracula since since the Todd Browning movie, Dracula stood in for something else. Dracula was Eastern European immigration was what Dracula was a stand-in for. Bela Lugosi's Dracula was a stand-in for in that movie. In the 70s and 80s, it's addiction. Vampires were addiction, and there's LGBTQ, the outsider relationships and things like that for at certain times in our history. Like vampires have stood in for a lot of different things, and that's what's and I think that's what was interesting. This was a new way of using Dracula to stand in for something that we're all whether it's Me Too or bad Hollywood fucking producers that shit on their assistants or whatever it is, like we are sort of talking about that and dealing with that now, and just a culture of like trying to treat people better, treat each other better. That's something, and that was important and kind of cool about doing this movie, seeing it through that lens, taking a cockeyed point of view and telling that story through Dracula. And I like the idea that like I guess two things. I like the idea that like maybe a movie about a guy who goes through therapy and then does his fucking affirmations while punching the shit out of Dracula as like the height of his self-actualization, self-realization. That seemed like a fun thing. But just the idea too that like the idea that you can you can if you're the idea that like people say like I'm living rent free in your head, right? Like that's the idea that that's kind of on you a little bit, right? Like you can if you give away your power, you're gonna you don't have to give away your power. You can take your power back. And to me, it's like having like a message like that in the movie is kind of cool. So
Thank you.
Sure.
In the 80s, I got a chance to see Herschel Gordon Lewis present a screening of Blood Feast, and
Oh, wow.
I drink your blood, I eat your skin.
Yeah.
And he was saying like, well, we didn't really think that we made these movies so much as excrete them. And so this tonight was a 10 out of 10 excretion. It was really good. And I was gonna ask, I love the scene where Lobo is, his whole insides are kicked out, and you show the X-ray of it. Now that was really genius. Could you tell about how you thought up the X-ray stuff? That was really great. Thanks.
Yeah, I ripped it off from Tony Jaa's The Protector. There's a Tony Jaa movie called The Protector. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. He's a really incredible martial artist and really inventive filmmaker. And other people have done that too. I mean, I think even like in Street Fighter and there have been a few filmmakers that like have done that thing where somebody gets sliced, and I can't remember what movie it was, but like you see the tendon snap inside and things like that. So it's something that they've used in martial arts cinema, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to import into our movie.
Thank you.
Hi. First of all, I just wanted to thank you again for bringing this movie here. I'm a big Evil Dead fan, so this really hit the sweet spot for me. I was curious about, well, I feel like when you adapt a property like Dracula, it's got like a fair amount of baggage kind of comes with it because it's so ingrained in our culture. And I was curious about like how you decided to like play with the rules of vampire lore in this movie. Like, there's a, you had the welcome mat, but then there's not a stake to be seen. So I'm curious, like, how did you decide what rules to acknowledge and adhere to and what rules to kind of filter out?
Yeah, I mean the crossbows that that guy's shooting are stakes technically. Inside that, I mean, yeah, the Vampire Power Wikipedia page is a pretty fun rabbit hole to go down, but it is, yeah, there's a lot of contradictory stuff. There's powers that obviously where you can vampires can change, literally just change into another human being and mimic another human being, stuff like that. Because we couldn't spend a lot of time like telling that story, I wanted to just stay with stuff that felt traditional, bats, smoke, sunlight, that sort of thing. I think by keeping it simple kind of keeps it so that you don't have to like do a lot of pipe in your movie to tell that story. And obviously his kind of charm, the way he's can seduce people in Renfield, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to keep it to like the kind of the core stuff.
I was gonna say that I noticed tonight with the crowd, which I thought was so great, because usually, you do establish the rules, and you didn't in this one. But I think because we've all seen so many vampire movies, like you take that into it. And I thought the moment when again Dracula's in the apartment, and then he can't believe he's in there, and then you go down to the mat, like got such a huge reaction.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so great because you haven't set that up. But it's just we all brought that into the theater, and the fact that those two moments, like same thing when he's like, no, when don't invite him in. Like I thought that was pretty great how well those worked.
Yeah, I mean it's just because again these things are part of our pop culture at this point, and to tell everybody's seen all the movies that do that, so to like have to tell that stuff in your movie. I mean you want treat the audience like they're smart, and hopefully it pays off. Yeah. That's not necessarily the studio's philosophy.
Hi, I have a question for Marco, actually. You said one of the biggest lessons you learned from Jerry Goldsmith was to kind of simplify and get stuff down to the point where the musicians can, actually play this stuff. What would you say to a composer who is struggling to simplify?
Well, you have to think of what the core idea is that you are trying to convey, and it was really a lesson for me. Like when I was they did a remake of The Omen, and Jerry Goldsmith, he did the original one. Actually, got that was his only Academy Award-winning score, and I would look at what he did, and the whole score can be reduced down to basically 3 notes. I mean, it's really, really simple at its core, and so it was a struggle for me to figure out, and I spent a lot of time laboring over it. But I mean, you can do it. It's you have to take some soul searching and figuring out what the important thing is that you're trying to convey, and thinking sort of change the way you think of that in those terms. Yeah, you can do it.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for a very bloody Tuesday. You were talking a bit earlier about Nick Holt's performance as Renfield and how we can get lost at times. Teddy Lobo did not get lost. He was certainly the yin to the yang. When did Ben Schwartz come onto this project?
We were kind of looking for who could play this part. I mean, I think that I wanted somebody. I kind of wanted to try somebody who could maybe people hadn't seen them do something like this before. I always think that's kind of fun, and somebody who's got comedy chops. And I've worked with Ben a few times. Ben was actually a writer on Robot Chicken when I was working on Robot Chicken, and then. We had helped out on the Turtles movie when the Turtles movie was in trouble at one point. The Michael Bay Turtles movie. There's a lot of stories there. And Ben came in and auditioned, and he just fucking killed it. Like he did a really good job, and just felt like he's a guy. I thought he can do more than just be a funny guy. He can actually, kind of do, the action stuff and be intense when he needs to be intense. So yeah, so he kind of was one of the early people who came on kind of early on in the process.
Thank you. Fight on.
First, I want to say thank you for having had a narcissistic ex myself. That last scene was very cathartic.
This is going to turn into a group therapy
Exactly, right?
session for sure.
Where did the inspiration for like the ultraviolence come from? When did you decide you're going that route? How did the studio take that? Like, was it pushback on that, or?
Some of it was in the script. I mean, so there's, like Renfield pulls a guy's arms off is in the script. Like that was in the script. But it didn't, it didn't escalate enough. And I think maybe the head punching off was in the script too. Yeah, the head punching off was in the script. But it kind of, it didn't quite, crescendo in a way that I thought because if you do it as a one-off, it's not quite as fun, but if you kind of build it and build the laughter and all that kind of thing. And that's why bringing in someone like Chris Brewster, somebody who's going to be able to, paint with a very physical, paint something very physical for you and help you kind of build that. And the guys went to every location and did really thorough stunt viz with their cameras and put it together with music and sound effects, and we would sit there and adjust those things and add on to those things. I mean, the face rip was something that that Christian Tinsley had. He showed me a few things that were kind of like things that he'd done and other things. I was like, oh, can we do a face rip? And can you literally pull a guy's face off in the middle of the scene? And so he had that idea, and there's actually something that we shot, but it's in the end credits, but something that we cut out of the scene. But there's a bit where in one take, one of the guys comes towards Hoult with a gun, pulls the gun out. Hoult disarms him, but pulls his hand skin off while he's disarming him. The guy then looks at his own, de-gloved hand, or bony hand, and then Hoult throws his own hand skin back in his face, and the guy, falls over. So
As one does.
yeah, the most intuitive thing in the world. And so there's things like that kind of came out of the collaboration. I mean, I really like, if you're going to make a movie, hopefully you're doing it not from a myopic point of view, but you're doing it because you want to invite a bunch of other people together to play and be playful. And that's the most fun, at least the most fun for me. So that's why I wanted, Ryan to be on set, Ryan the writer to be on set, because it's like, okay, how can this be additive for everybody? How can we have the person who wrote the original text there, in case we want something or try something or have him help us shape things? Have Chris Brewster, he looks at things like a filmmaker. I want people to look at their job. I want them to be people that want to be filmmakers. It's way more fun working with people who are there challenging the director, and challenging themselves, and they're pushing each other. It like I said, that's the most joy you can have when you have all these really smart people trying to make the movie better. That's what Chris and Phil do, the guys that I've worked with on the Lego movies. That's how they operate every single day. They're always wanting to, be challenged and challenge each other and challenge themselves and that sort of thing. And that, we're going to try to just keep going until we get the best idea and really push it. I mean, in the Lego movie, we literally did an entire version of that movie and threw it all out and started, over. And that was their script, and that was their, literally everything. And they're like, okay, yeah, that didn't fucking work. So now we got to figure out how to make this thing work. And that's where the special came from. Emmett and the Craggle and all that fucking shit just came out of, doing all of that stuff together, with the whole team. And the Lego Batman, a lot of that stuff came out of literally getting on a mic. We only had it took I think Chris and Phil were on the Lego movie for 2 years before I came on, and I was on the Lego movie for 4 years. It was a 6-year process making the movie. For Lego Batman, we had 2.5 years to get the movie from zero script to finished product. So, because in success, everyone wants that second thing. So, a lot of that movie was made with, through, getting the writers in a room with the editors and storyboard artists and everybody else, and building the movie, together in the old Disney way. That's the way Disney would do it. You just sit there and whisper. You go around the room and whisper the story to the storyboard artists, and they draw the scene, and they just do this collaboration back and forth, and it kind of again, this sort of, could become this really beautiful thing. So I like that, when I'm working on set. I want to try to bring as many people in. Lisa Lavas, costumes, Alec Hammond, Chris Brewster, Jamie Price, and then in post, people like Marco, who can just, again, collaborate and be additive to the movie. Anyway, long-winded.
Thank you.
But appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good question.
So you mentioned using a brightly colored blood to bring some humor into the violence. That combined with the amount of limb detachment in the fight scenes really reminded me of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So I was wondering if that was a conscious reference or just a coincidence.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, between Evil Dead 2 and American Werewolf and Monty Python films and all of that stuff is probably sitting in there, absolutely. Fond memories of the It's Just a Flesh Wound and all that shit. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Chris with a K, and I'm a codependent. No, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to say this movie was fucking incredible. Far exceed. I already had high expectations, but this far exceeded them. And also like the other person said, as an Evil Dead fan, I could totally see the love and the references to Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 especially. And I hope you get to work on an Evil Dead film someday.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to say two quick things. One is, for each of you, what are you most proud of with this film? And then the other thing I wanted to say is, if Universal plans to revisit their idea of the dark shared universe of Universal Monsters, I think they should bring you back and have you continue to work with the other Universal Monsters.
I think the thing I'm most proud of is Nick Hoult and Nick Cage's performances. To be on the ground floor with them, working with them, and watch them create this stuff. Because they are creating it. And that was really something that I'll never forget, and I really feel proud to be a part of, to work with those two, and just kind of be on the front row seat, watching them build these characters was super fucking cool.
I just still can't believe we are here and we finished the movie and made it. It was just
we literally just finished the movie.
It was
2 weeks to spare.
Yeah.
Such a long journey, and every day was not without some sort of obstacle, whether it was weather related on set. We were dealing with, tornadoes that had never been in New Orleans before.
Touchdown a mile from where we were shooting.
It's 6 blocks.
Yeah, 6 blocks. From where we're shooting in an abandoned
church that we turned into a murder room.
We turned into a murder room. We had a giant guillotine that was not well secured over our heads.
No. We exploded that priest on Palm Sunday too, by the way. But no, it was. We were in and out of every location so quickly. There were days when we were doing over 60 setups with our second unit. Just the fact that we had such high hopes and such huge ambitions, and getting to watch it with a full theater in this beautiful room, have you guys so engaged, reacting everywhere we had hoped, and then sprinkled throughout where I never even imagined there would be a reaction or a laugh. It's just the most wonderful feeling. So just having even one person say that they love the movie, let alone so many, is such a huge accomplishment, and I'm incredibly proud.
Yeah, I'm really proud of this movie. Stylistically, there's so many different styles, and the fact that they were all able to be in this unified film that has its own voice is, I'm really proud of it. And that is actually I saw the playback of the mix, but this is my first time seeing it in a theater and hearing people's reactions in real time and all that. And it's really, it's really fun. So, yeah. Thanks for hiring me.
You guys did a fucking amazing job, seriously.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys didn't answer his other question, which is actually my question.
That worked out then. Go for it.
The shared universe
Oh, yeah.
with Universal Monsters, Alex Kurtzman and Chris Morgan didn't work out. I kind of knew it didn't work out. It was my gut feeling, but I had a feeling that Chris would do such a good job with Renfield just because Lego was such a complicated story, and he just did such a perfect job. The music was great. Marco, by the way, huge fan of Hurt Locker's composition. Great job. Is there a future? Can you guys get Universal leadership to have Chris at the helm to move on with Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Wolfman, and all those great Universal monster inventory? Thank you.
I'll make some calls.
I mean, Robert Kirkman is sort of at the helm of doing that sort of thing with Universal. I don't, I think the studio did the right thing from the standpoint of just try to make a movie that is, that stands on its own. I think that's the main thing that they were doing. I think they're trying to, Babe Ruth and, point where the home run's going to go, kind of thing is, it's like, that's, I mean, I think that, that kind of shot themselves in the foot with that. So, I mean, and I think the sad thing is that like any one of those individual movies could have been a good movie. Like, seeing Angelina Jolie do Bride of Frankenstein, seeing Javier Bardem do fucking, doing Frankenstein, that Frankenstein's monster, that could be fucking cool. There's no reason why it couldn't be fucking cool. The problem is when you're trying to, that's where it gets kind of cynical. When you're trying to, get ahead of by putting some pipe into the movie, putting characters in the movie that are meant to connect all these things. I think that just rubs people the wrong way and makes people kind of just feel like, anti. Just make a fucking good movie. That's the best thing that Iron Man, did was you cared about Tony Stark, you cared about that world, you built a really great story, and then the fucking very end of it, Sam Jackson says, I want to talk about the Avengers Initiative, and that's it. Like don't worry about shit like that. Just make a fucking good movie, and then maybe in success they'll do something else. But I just hope that, I mean, the best thing that can happen from a movie like this is that studios or Everything Everywhere All at Once or anything, like the studios would just go, hey, you can make other, you can take an IP like this and try to do a fun take on an old IP and create something original out of it. But that would be the most satisfying thing to come out of a movie like this. Is like, okay, cool, yeah, we can do R-rated movies aren't necessarily box office poison or whatever. I mean, that's the best. Hopefully, the best thing that kind of come out of this. There's something. That's what I hope.
Okay, last question. Make it a good one.
Hi.
No pressure.
I wanted to ask Mr. McKay. You spoke a bit to your influences from the previous iterations of Dracula, from Sam Raimi, as we found out from Monty Python. I wanted to ask if you had any influences that were sort of unexpected, that spoke more to the police investigation side of the film, the romantic comedy or the drama comedy. I read about how Jerry Maguire was very integral to the Lego Batman movie, and seeing this as another movie about a narcissist with a thing for bats. If there was, any out of the box inspirations that you found.
Yeah, Jerry Maguire and About a Boy, ironically, working with Nicole were key for Lego Batman. I mean, visually, obviously, there's lots of things, inspiration that I, pulled as far as like how we're going to shoot the movie, and again, like the lens choices and stuff like that, and the way we, wanted the movie. Never wanted the movie to feel like it was a fucking parody. So there was sort of anti, things. We can't make Dracula Dead and Loving It. Somebody's already done that. You can't make Love at First Bite, or that sort of thing, or so that was stuff to stay away from. But honestly, just it was a lot of it was just trying to stay true to, what if this wasn't a supernatural movie? What would you, how would you shoot this scene? How would you block this scene? How would you, what feelings are you going to draw on? Again, taking it out of the realm of the supernatural as much as possible from grounding the characters and performances and things like that. That was what was important to me. Probably the only, I can't even, what was the weirdest fucking, besides The Graduate, what was the weirdest fucking, reference that we had? I can't think of anything other than that we pulled Anne Bancroft out for this movie. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, guys, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
One request to you. This movie comes out in 2 weeks. It is an original movie. If you like the movie, tell your friends, tweet about it,
Please.
write on Facebook. If you don't like the movie, keep it to yourself. But thank you for coming, and let's have a big round of applause for these guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.